You think they've forgotten you. You think silence has ended the story. But here's the truth. No contact doesn't break the narcissist's control. It exposes it. Because the moment you go quiet, their world begins to tremble. The supply is gone, and so is the mirror that once reflected their false self. And that silence, your silence, becomes the loudest sound they've ever heard. Silence is not empty. It's full of answers. When you choose to go no contact with a narcissist, you step into a space that feels foreign at first. After all the chaos, the arguments, the endless emotional roller coasters, silence feels unnatural. But what's really happening beneath that silence is transformation. For the first time, the truth begins to surface. Not through words, not through confrontation, but through absence. The narcissist has spent months, maybe years, controlling the narrative. They've defined what's true, what's real, and even how you see yourself. But once you remove your voice, once you step out of their story, the illusion starts to crumble. Silence exposes the truth they've been hiding behind. To a narcissist, silence is unbearable. It's not just quiet. It's exposure. They've built their identity on constant validation, attention, and reaction. They feed on being seen, being feared, being admired. But when you go silent, you cut off their oxygen. There's no more supply, no emotional response to sustain their fragile sense of power. And without it, they start to unravel. They can't project their image onto you anymore. They can't use your emotions to reflect back the version of themselves they want to believe in. For the first time, they're forced to face their own emptiness. And that's what terrifies them most. While you sit in silence, they sit in panic. They start to question what you're thinking, what you're doing, who you're with. They can't stand not knowing. Their mind becomes a battlefield of self-doubt and anger. How dare you ignore me becomes their unspoken mantra, but they can't say it out loud because doing so would mean admitting they've lost control. And control is everything to them. They may try to bait you, sending vague messages, posting things online, or using mutual friends to provoke a reaction. But every time you don't respond, every time you remain silent, you reinforce a boundary they never believed you were capable of setting. The beauty of silence is that it's not passive, it's powerful. It doesn't mean you're weak or afraid. It means you're done explaining, done defending, done trying to prove your worth to someone who was never truly listening. Silence is the language of self-respect. It's the sound of reclaiming your peace. In the stillness, you begin to hear your own thoughts again. You start to recognize the manipulation for what it was. You start to rebuild trust, not with them, but with yourself. The narcissist's reaction to your silence reveals more than their words ever could. It shows how deeply they depended on your energy to maintain their illusion of control. And as their mask begins to slip, you finally see that the chaos was never about love. It was about domination. By choosing silence, you choose truth. You choose freedom, because in the end, silence doesn't just expose the narcissist, it awakens you. When you go long-term, no contact with a narcissist, something profound happens beneath the surface. Their ego begins to collapse. The person who once appeared so confident, so in control, begins to lose the very thing that sustains them, power over you. The narcissist's entire sense of self is built like a fragile house of mirrors, reflecting back only the admiration, attention, and emotional energy of others. When you walk away and go silent, all those mirrors shatter. They no longer see the reflection that told them who they were, and without that reflection, they begin to crumble from within. At first, they'll pretend not to care. They'll wear a mask of indifference, convincing everyone, including themselves, that you meant nothing. They might even go out of their way to show how happy or unbothered they are without you. But behind closed doors, their inner world starts to unravel. Narcissists depend on validation the way most people depend on air. Without it, they start gasping emotionally, scrambling to fill the void that your absence left behind. They'll replay conversations, stalk your online presence, or reach out to mutual acquaintances to see how you're doing, all while insisting they've moved on. It's not love driving this behavior, it's the panic of losing control. You see, when you were in contact, you were their mirror. Every reaction, whether it was your tears, your laughter, your anger, or your forgiveness, gave them emotional feedback. It told them they still had influence. But once that stops, they're forced to face a reality they've spent their entire lives avoiding. They are not as powerful as they think. Their ego starts to implode because their identity can't exist without external admiration or attention. This is why they often seek a new supply right after you cut contact. It's not that they've replaced you emotionally, it's that they're desperate to patch the hole you left in their self-image. Meanwhile, you might feel guilty, even tempted to reach out, because the narcissist's collapse can look like genuine pain or remorse. But it's important to understand that their suffering isn't about losing you, it's about losing control over you. Their apologies, their sudden vulnerability, their claims of change, they're all attempts to rebuild their ego. The narcissist doesn't want healing, they want reassurance. They want to know that even in your silence, they still matter. But as time passes, their mask begins to slip. The confident exterior fades, replaced by insecurity, bitterness, and rage. The longer you maintain no contact, the more they realize their usual tactics no longer work. And that realization, that they no longer have power over your emotions, is the ultimate blow to their ego. So while you may not see it, your silence is creating a quiet revolution. You're not just protecting your peace, you're dismantling their illusion. Every day you remain no contact, their false self weakens. Their ego, once inflated and untouchable, slowly deflates under the weight of truth. And in that collapse, you find your liberation. Proof that you were never powerless. The power was always yours. When a narcissist tries to reconnect after you've gone no contact, it's easy to mistake their sudden attention for love. They might say they miss you, that they've changed, or that they finally understand what went wrong. But beneath the surface, none of this is about love, it's about power. Every word, every gesture, every attempt to reach you is driven by a deep, unrelenting need to reassert control. Narcissists don't crave connection, they crave dominance. What they truly want is not to rebuild the relationship, but to remind themselves that they still have the ability to make you react. To a narcissist, emotions are a game of strategy. Your sadness, your anger, your hope, these are tools they use to manipulate you. When they sense they're losing control, they'll cycle through tactics trying to find the one that works. One day they may play the victim, acting heartbroken and helpless, saying, "I can't live without you." The next they'll lash out, accusing you of being cold or selfish. And if neither of those tactics gets a response, they'll switch to charm, nostalgia, or even promises of change. But underneath all those shifting roles lies one motive: they need to feel powerful again. The narcissist's concept of love is rooted in control. When they say, "I love you," what they often mean is, "I love how you make me feel important." It's never about your well-being, it's about maintaining emotional leverage. They measure love not by connection, but by compliance. How much attention, forgiveness, and validation you're willing to give them. When that supply is cut off, they feel rejected, humiliated, and exposed. Their ego interprets your silence as an act of rebellion, something that must be punished or reversed. That's when they begin their campaign to draw you back in. Not because they care about you, but because your independence threatens their illusion of superiority. Every reaction you give, even anger, feeds their sense of significance. To them, indifference is the real danger. That's why no contact is so powerful. It's the one thing they can't control. When you don't answer, don't argue, and don't engage, you take away their favorite weapon, your emotions. Without your reaction, they're forced to confront a truth they can't accept, that they're not the center of your world anymore. Over time, the narcissist's attempts to regain power may grow more desperate. They might use guilt, pity, or even mutual friends to reach you, but every time you hold your boundary, their illusion weakens. They begin to realize that their old methods no longer work, and that realization terrifies them. They can't manipulate what they can't reach. It's important to remember this: their rage, their charm, their sudden vulnerability. It's all about control, not love. Real love doesn't demand obedience. It doesn't manipulate or instill fear. Real love respects your freedom. When you stay no contact, you're not being cruel. You're ending a cycle of emotional domination. You're reclaiming your right to peace, and in doing so, you're breaking the power they once had over your heart. When silence begins to threaten a narcissist's control, they often turn to one of their oldest and most destructive weapons: the smear campaign. It's their way of rewriting the story so they can remain the hero or the victim, never the villain. When you go no contact, you take away their voice in your life, and that loss enrages them. To the narcissist, silence isn't just rejection, it's humiliation. They can't stand the idea that you walked away first, that you have the power to ignore them. So they fight back, not by healing, not by reflecting, but by destroying your reputation to preserve their own. The smear campaign usually begins quietly. At first, they'll test the waters by dropping small comments to mutual friends. I don't know what happened, but they just changed, or I tried everything, but they pushed me away. They'll act confused, heartbroken, misunderstood. Their goal isn't to tell the truth, it's to control the narrative. They know that if they can reach people before you do, they can shape how others see you. Narcissists are masters of image. They'll use tears, charm, and fabricated details to make themselves look like the wounded one, the loyal partner or friend who was betrayed. And because they can be so convincing, many people believe them. But underneath their victim act lies something darker: revenge. The narcissist feels deeply insulted when you go no contact. It wounds their pride, and they can't handle the loss of control. The smear campaign is their way of restoring balance. If they can't have your attention, they'll make sure you lose the support of others. They want to isolate you, to make you doubt yourself, to force you into defending your character. Because if you start explaining, you're still playing their game. The moment you respond to the lies, they've won back a piece of control. It's one of the hardest parts of going no contact. Watching them twist reality while you stay silent. You'll want to speak out, to correct the record, to make everyone see the truth. But the most powerful thing you can do is hold your ground. Let time and consistency speak for you. While the narcissist burns bridges with manipulation, you rebuild them with integrity. The people who truly know you will begin to see the difference. They'll notice the pattern. How the narcissist always has a new enemy. How every story centers on their victimhood. Eventually, their mask slips, and their lies begin to contradict themselves. In the end, the smear campaign reveals more about them than it ever could about you. It exposes their desperation, their fragility, and their dependence on control. By refusing to respond, you rob them of their victory. You show them that their words no longer define you. The truth doesn't need to be shouted, it only needs to be lived. And as you continue to live in peace, their noise fades into the background, becoming exactly what it always was: projection and fear disguised as power. There's a deep strength in silence that most people never understand, and that's exactly why it terrifies a narcissist. When you choose to stay no contact, when you refuse to engage, explain, or defend yourself, you take away the one thing they depend on most: your emotional reaction. To the narcissist, your energy was their lifeline. Every tear, every argument, every moment of confusion gave them proof that they still had control. But when you stop responding, when you detach completely, you shift the balance of power. Suddenly, they're the ones left chasing closure while you stand grounded in peace. Your silence is not weakness, it's a declaration of strength. It says, you no longer have access to me. And that's something the narcissist cannot tolerate. For years, they trained you to believe that reacting was survival. They provoked you until you defended yourself. They hurt you until you apologized. They confused you until you explained. But now, by saying nothing, you break that conditioning. You teach them that their chaos no longer reaches you. Every time you ignore their messages, their games, or their fake apologies, you reinforce a truth they've always feared: that their control was an illusion. The narcissist will see your silence as defiance. They'll test you to see if it's real, poking at your emotions, pretending to care, or even trying to guilt you into breaking the boundary. I just wanted to talk, they might say, or you're being cruel. But don't mistake this for genuine concern. What they want isn't understanding, it's access. The moment you reply, even to defend yourself, they'll twist your words and pull you back into the same emotional web. Silence denies them that satisfaction. It forces them to sit in the discomfort they've spent their entire life avoiding, the reality that they can't control everything. What silence gives you, on the other hand, is space. Space to breathe, to think, to heal. You start to see how much energy you once gave away just to keep the peace. You start to feel what calm truly feels like. No manipulation, no walking on eggshells, no guilt. That stillness is where you begin to rebuild your strength. You realize that you don't need to win an argument to reclaim your power. You simply need to stop participating in their chaos. Over time, your silence becomes your boundary, your protection, and your peace. It's not about ignoring them out of spite. It's about choosing yourself over their dysfunction. You stop reacting not because you don't care, but because you finally do, about your sanity, your dignity, and your future. The narcissist will hate your silence because it exposes their weakness. But you'll learn to love it because it reveals your strength. It's the sound of healing, quiet but powerful, calm but unshakable. In silence, you're no longer trying to be heard by someone who never listened. You're finally listening to yourself, and that's where true freedom begins. No contact is often misunderstood. Some think it's a punishment, a cold, heartless act meant to make the narcissist suffer. But that's not the truth. No contact isn't revenge, it's freedom. It's the quiet, courageous decision to stop living your life according to someone else's manipulation. It's the moment you say, I deserve peace more than I fear losing you. For so long, the narcissist taught you that your worth was tied to how much you could give, forgive, and endure. They made you believe that setting boundaries was cruel, that self-respect was selfish. But no contact shatters that illusion. It's not about hurting them, it's about saving yourself. When you go no contact, you're choosing to step out of a cycle that's been draining your soul. Narcissists thrive on chaos. They feed on emotional conflict and thrive when you're uncertain. They want you to feel responsible for their moods, their anger, their happiness. Every time you try to fix things, they regain control. But the moment you stop participating, the entire dynamic collapses. That's why no contact is so powerful. It's not a form of cruelty, it's a refusal to be controlled. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You'll question yourself. You'll feel guilt creeping in, whispering that you're abandoning someone who needs you. That's the echo of their conditioning, not your conscience. Narcissists are experts at making you feel guilty for choosing yourself. They'll say you're cold, ungrateful, even heartless. But remember, they only call it cruelty because it cuts off their access to you. They don't miss your love, they miss your compliance. Freedom doesn't always feel like liberation at first. Sometimes it feels like loss. You may grieve the version of yourself that tried so hard to be enough for them. You may miss the highs, the moments when they made you feel special, seen, chosen, but with time, you begin to realize that what you thought was love was actually control disguised as connection. The peace that follows no contact is quiet but steady, the kind of peace that doesn't depend on someone else's approval. No contact teaches you one of life's hardest truths. You can't heal in the same environment that hurt you. You can't grow while someone keeps cutting you down. You can't rediscover who you are while someone keeps convincing you that you're not enough. Walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's understanding that your well-being is worth protecting, even from someone you once loved. And over time, something beautiful happens. You stop waiting for closure because you realize you've already given it to yourself. You stop wondering how they'll react because it no longer matters. No contact gives you the gift of perspective, the ability to see that the battle was never about winning them back, but about finding your way back to you. It's not revenge. It's rebirth. It's freedom disguised as silence.